I'm Anita Kartalopoulos. I serve on the Mixed Commission. I'm the first Vice President nationally of the Philoptochos. And I'm somebody like most all of you who grew up in the Archdiocese of America. I grew up in Toledo, Ohio. I knew who my Archbishop was in Toledo, Ohio. When Iakovos came, like Halley's Comet, he would appear, and it was like an amazing blessing came to us. I knew who my bishop was in Detroit because we were part of Detroit Diocese. That's a little trip down memory lane, and it's a blessing that at the end of this Paschal season, we have an opportunity to have this conversation. And it is a conversation so we can share our various viewpoints. But you know, you have to split screen your head a little bit and look at the Archdiocese as we knew it in the past and the way it is right now. And I will say to you, as I look at it, based on the frame of reference that I have, having lived in the Midwest, having lived in the Northeast, having lived through the events of the metropolis of New Jersey, I think what's happened is that we really have silos that have been propagated throughout the Archdiocese. I think there is something taking place that is growth, that is attention to ministry, but it's also something else. You know, there's a beautiful Greek word called esostrefia, looking inward. And we have these silos that are growing strong inwardly, concerned only with themselves. So you can't say there's not ministry or there's not growth. There is. But what about the national church? And I would ask you to consider this. That same esostrefia where everybody was building inwardly caused little concern for anyone for the national church. And this is what I give you as examples for your consideration. We had an archdiocese that was in financial troubles, to be kind. But you know, it was no one's problem. Everybody was looking inward. Each hierarch was building what they were building. We had a clergy pension fund that was failing. But it was no one's problem because everyone was looking inward. We had Holy Cross Hellenic College that was going in extremis, but nobody was looking at the national church. The Maliotes Center was in litigation for over a decade. You would think that some of these items where every metropolitan, almost every metropolitan, for example, and I say this with respect, I don't say it with disrespect, but your alums, Metropolitan Methodius, you're the president, and yet everybody was working on their own silo, doing the best job that they could for their people. But what about the national church? We had monastic communities that were kind of out there, but they weren't really gathered together under the umbrella of the national church. We had a pandemic that came along. Interestingly enough, though, there was a step up, and it was the Archdiocese once again, and it was the leadership of His Eminence, and I'm looking at Ted Vagelos right now, because we had a program in Boca Raton called Say a Prayer, Light a Candle, and it was propagated throughout the Archdiocese through the efforts of His Eminence to help keep our parishes afloat. That's what a national church does. There were funds that came back, pandemic funds that were shared with all of the metropolises. St. Nicholas was floundering for over a decade, and whether you see St. Nicholas as a regional problem or a national issue, the point is, we may have had a hierarchy, we may have had a synod, but there was no concern for the national church. I think these are unintended consequences of the structure that we've been living with for about 20 years now. I won't even touch what took place in New Jersey because there's little to be said. But I will say this, I personally think that the ecumenical patriarchate should not have to swoop in, helicopter in, and solve our problems on things like that. But why did that happen? Because there was no accountability here. So there are a number of things that need attention. And I will say this, and it dovetails into what Paulette said. His Eminence is here almost 4 years. We just got past the 4th anniversary of his election, and we're not even at the 4th anniversary of his enthronement. But I believe that the Archdiocesan finances have been stabilized, and I think they're on a good path. I think the clergy pension fund, for the first time, as I understand it, and I'm not on Archdiocesan Council, but I read and I listen, and it seems there's more money coming in than there is going out. There's a stabilization. It seems to me that Holy Cross Hellenic College, with some pretty amazing people on its board and a good president so far, has stabilized as a situation. And I do believe that the monastic communities have been brought together in a fashion that they haven't been before. I think that's a lot for less than 4 years. And I do think that because we're Americans and we do understand that we have to have gratitude, appreciation, and thanksgiving for accomplishments and not selective memory, that I do think His Eminence, and I say this with all due respect, and this is a man that I've known for 25 years, has earned our trust, and I think he has shown that he does have concern for the national church. So I thank you for the opportunity to say a few words, and I ask you to just think about, go down memory lane, remember where you were, remember what you knew of the church, and then ask yourself, do you know what's happening even in each of these metropolises, these freestanding metropolises? It's like they exist as separate entities. The silo effect is not good.
Thank you.